All right, we few but mighty. We'll go ahead and get started. It's Friday, the weather's yucky. That's all I can guess in terms of why people aren't here. But you know what? It's everyone's own education and they get to claim it in whatever way they choose. So, just going through and marking the folks who aren't here. Okie dokie. So today, what we're going to do is finish up our lecture. And in theory, I have a group assignment. We'll kind of see how many people end up on Zoom, and we can do 2 groups in here in person and then a couple on Zoom. We can make it work. But first off, let's get into some of what's on our slides here. So it turns out the last video I couldn't play on Wednesday was actually gone for YouTube. So for once it wasn't Google Slides' fault. But I did find a different one about self-justification. So I will play that for y'all.
Hi, my name is Andrew Adonis, and my question to you is, what can we do in order to challenge the status quo on how we see ourselves and other people, so that we can become better versions of ourselves? Today's topic is, what is the difference between an explanation and self-justification? When are we explaining something, and when are we self-justifying our actions? Well, the answer is rather simple. A self-justification is when we give an answer to a question that was never asked. Let's look at some examples. Let's say that you work in a company and you are responsible for a project. Scenario number 1. Your boss comes to you and says, "Dear employee, I've noticed that this project has come to a stop." And scenario number 2. Your boss comes to you and says, "Dear employee, I noticed that this project has come to a stop. What has happened?" Do you see the difference? In the first part, there is an implicit question, yet the question is never asked. So what happens to us? We take the psychological pressure and we feel the need to justify our actions. Why did the project stop? Who is responsible for it and what's going to happen? Instead of doing that, we could just simply say, yes, the project has stopped. We are working on it and it will start next week. If the question is asked by your boss why it has stopped or what has happened, then you can proceed to give an explanation to what has happened. It has stopped because of such and such and such reasons, and this is what is going to happen. These are the actions that we're going to take. This is the difference between an explanation and a self-justification. So I would like to invite you in the future not to fall in the self-justification trap. Wait for the question to be asked. And if the question is not asked, ask the question yourself. What do you mean, or what do you want to know? If you liked this video or you found it useful, like, share, and subscribe.
Alrighty. Sorry, I'm going to be a little echoey for just a second. Second. Oh, that's awful. There you go. All right, there we go. All right, next thing here. So we watched this other video on Wednesday, so we'll skip past this one. And so kind of like the video we just watched talked about, you know, you need to think about how you're explaining things, right? And where does self-justification come in? And are you being honest or making excuses, right? So in preparation for a recent committee meeting, the group's chairperson asked members to come with all the arguments they could marshal in support of an action the committee might take. Then he asked us to also bring to the meeting all the arguments we could make against the intended action. So it's like a pro-con list, right? And that might sound really simple, but it's useful and powerful and unusual. The single step of laying out the arguments and the evidence on both sides of the proposal ensured that the committee would not thoughtlessly put itself in the position of later defending a bad decision merely because the members had not considered the alternatives. It also allowed the group to avoid making a decision that it would later believe it must defend in order to save face, even if the decision was ill-conceived. So essentially, if you actually sit and think through a decision rather than sort of knee-jerk it, right, then you know the good and the bad about it. And then you don't feel like you need to like have your hackles up about it. And then people with high self-esteem are less likely to engage in self-justification, basically because they're less invested in any one outcome, right? They feel good about themselves anyway. As are those whose decisions are anonymous, and those who do not see the outcomes of decisions as indicative of their true abilities of worth. So the thing about decisions being anonymous is one of the reasons why voting is anonymous in this country, right? Here we have another echo of our earlier discussion about the importance of scientific literacy as awareness of process. So we try to avoid seeing problem solving and decision making as threats to our personal worth. And there are certainly people, politicians, other famous people, folks on social media, right, who any sort of problem solving and decision making is a threat to their personal worth, right? And we want to keep our focus on the integrity of the process, like concerning those alternative outcomes. And then you minimize that tendency towards self-justification, and self-justification can really distort your judgment. So belief perseverance is adherence to belief and unwillingness to admit error, even in the face of contradictory evidence. And I think a lot of people, when they think about belief perseverance, think about religion, but it doesn't have to be spiritual or religious in nature. It can be any belief that you just hold on to in the face of evidence against it. And so I have a couple of short videos to illustrate this. The first one is from the CBS show Bull.
You want to talk juries?
Sure. I think this morning's going to be all about belief perseverance.
Belief perseverance?
People who insist on holding on to something they believe in, even in the face of new information that contradicts that belief.
Where I come from, people just call that stubborn.
Stubborn works too. We definitely want to eliminate, or at least minimize, the stubborn. The job is going to be to convince our jury that the police investigation was compromised from the start. They zeroed right in on Leo. They barely investigated because they had their theory, and they held on to that theory to the exclusion of any other information or possibilities. Now that's the narrative. For that argument to stick, we need jurors whose first impressions are malleable to new information, new evidence. We need people who aren't stubborn.
Any hopeless romantics here today? Anyone here believe in love at first sight? No. You, ma'am. Any reason in particular you don't believe people can fall in love at first sight?
My first date with my now husband was a disaster. First, he went to the wrong restaurant, so he was 20 minutes late. And when he finally got there, he was so nervous he dumped a glass of wine on my favorite blouse. And then to top it off, he left his wallet in the cab. So I had to pay for dinner. But he made me laugh. So I gave him another chance. A few more chances, actually. And all that's to say that even when you think you know, you don't know.
Lady doesn't go all in on first impressions. We like it. Or don't we?
No, I think we do. She reads websites from all sides of the political spectrum, is registered as an independent, and she and her husband just celebrated their 35th anniversary. From where I'm sitting, she's our dream juror.
And so that's also shows a little bit of how people with psychological know-how can be involved in the court process. So one of the ways that psychologists can be involved is in juror selection. So we use our psychological know-how to help select jurors that will be favorable to the side we're hired by. The next one is from the original My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and just a cute little example here.
My dad believed in only two things: that Greeks should educate non-Greeks about being Greek, and that any ailment, from psoriasis to poison ivy, could be cured with Windex.
Oh, look at this. Rash. Somebody gave me the mati.
Put some Windex
Oh,
on.
God, please, please.
Vula, this works. Last night, my toe was as big as my face.
And if you've seen that whole movie, it's actually really cute at the end on their wedding day. Both the husband and wife get a big zit, and she's trying all these things to cover it. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I had one this morning too." She's like, "Where is it?" He's like, "I just put some Windex on it." So, you know, again, the idea that sometimes stuff works, sometimes stuff doesn't. So belief perseverance cannot be overcome by just asking the person not to be biased, right? Otherwise the world would be much easier. Something that does work is to ask the person to explain or imagine how an opposite belief could be true. So a little bit of that cognitive dissonance we talked about. However, this approach is not always helpful, especially if the individual is asked to identify multiple reasons for an alternative belief. Apparently, generating a number of explanations is more difficult than identifying a single explanation, making the truth of the alternative belief seem somehow less likely than the one that you've been holding on to. However, being required to identify those multiple explanations for the erroneous belief has a parallel effect. If it's laborious to justify the belief, we may judge the difficulty to be an indicator of the low likelihood of the truth of the belief and give it up. So making it easier to identify reasons for an alternative belief, but more difficult to explain the erroneous belief, is perhaps an effective strategy for reducing this. A critical skill is to become our own devil's advocate. This is really hard, right? When we believe something truly deeply in our core, right? It's really hard to question that. So think about how our own conclusions could be wrong and how an alternative might be correct. We must consider the opposite side. And this nice quote here: when people believe they have absolute knowledge with no test in reality, this is how they behave. And we should always be certain to have a test in reality. So the next thing I'm going to have everybody do is there's a group assignment on Blackboard. So I'm going to go ahead and go into Blackboard to show you where that is real quick here. And so we'll do our two folks in the back and our two folks in the front as groups in here. And then on Zoom, I think, yeah, we'll have enough for at least 2, if not 3 groups on Zoom as well. Give me just a second here. Hopefully it won't make me double verify, because I'm not about that this morning. Oh, thank you. Ooh. All right, so if you go into courses, slowly, apparently, there we go. And you go to our course. And you go into assignments. There is one about fake news. So if you click this link, it will open a copy of it for you. And I'm actually just going to stick that link into the Google Slides too, for anyone who is there. Might make it easier to find. But when you open this link, what you'll see is, very slowly, some questions relating to the perusal readings on Blackboard, or on perusal actually, and then some questions about fake news itself. So I'm going to have each group go through all 5 questions. So this will probably take a good chunk of time. And the folks in here can get started. Folks on Zoom, What I'm gonna do is put you in breakout rooms, and then when you're in the breakout rooms, you can discuss this as well. So let me go ahead and throw that link in the chat for everybody. And then make sure you grab it before you bop into your breakout room. And then I will create the breakout rooms. We're gonna do 3. That'll be 2 or 3 people in each room, and that allows you to really discuss things. So within your rooms, if you want to share screen for the document or the perusal readings, you can do that as well. Alrighty, so I'm creating those rooms right now, and there will be 3 people per room. And I am just checking my options. Yep. Gonna go ahead and open them and get you moved over. So again, make sure you grab that link that's in the chat or on the Google Drive. All good, and here you go. Hey, we're doing a group project, so you can join either group. We just started a couple minutes ago. Yeah. Good question. Yes. Let's say, just share it with me when you're done. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just checking the YouTube videos for next week, so.
Now more is.
Hey Connor, we're doing a group activity, so just join either group.
And one person.
Sorry, guys. I'm gonna like turn on the volume here. Figured while y'all are working, I'll go through and make sure the videos are working in the coming up slides. Not that that means they'll work next week, but you know, there's at least a chance. Right. So, after financial aid and see if they're able to help you out. If they're not, let me know and I can talk to brokers and see what we can do. Sure. And how are folks doing? What question are y'all on? Are you done? You're still working? Okay, checking. Everyone was like big eyes, so I was like, they must still be working. How's everybody doing? Done? Good? Alrighty. I will bring back our Zoom, folks. Hopefully this will turn back on. Yay. Right, they're coming back slowly but surely. Alrighty. Okay. So let's just talk through these real quick. Let me go ahead and share screen and share our document here. I just went to a program at EVMS the other night, so I was inspired by that, and I'm adding some stuff to our final lecture for the semester about graduate programs in the area. All right, and I'll just throw this out to anybody. According to this perusal reading, how does fake news spread? Who does the spread and why? And folks on Zoom, you can unmute or throw stuff in the chat. And folks in here, you can throw stuff out.
I think novelty bias is a big thing. Like fake news stories are often gonna spread faster because of the initial shock reaction, because usually fake news stories revolve around like pretty big public figureheads. So if you see something like in a negative light or something like that, it's gonna cause people to react more emotionally, and then that's gonna spread organically faster than a normal news story would.
Yeah, I think that's really true. When you pull on those emotional strings, right, people will respond more quickly. We're only got 3 minutes left, so I'm gonna skip the next 2 questions and see what examples everybody found of fake news. So I'll throw it to the group up front here in class. What did you all find? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Lots of weird fake news about COVID, right? All right, how about my group in the back? What did y'all find for your example?
It was confirmed that they contain traces of drugs. So I had found that on a website that is known to be a moderate outlet, and so I cross-checked it with the New York Times and the Seattle Times about what information was official, and there was some discrepancies about what about the whole thing, but mainly that Antifa was responsible, but the New York Times and Seattle Times, they did not confirm who was responsible by law enforcement.
Yeah, they probably don't know. The reason I gasped so audibly is I lived through the anthrax scare after 9/11. So if you're not familiar, I bet a bunch of you were pretty young or maybe not even born yet, right? People were actually mailing anthrax, which is essentially a bioweapon, and like someone was sent to the White House and things like that. And that can make you very sick and die. So that's why when I hear white powder, I'm like, oh. But yeah, that's a really good point that like, even if there's some truth, right, to some of this news, we don't always get the full story. All right, Zoom folks. Anyone have anything they want to share for what they found about fake news?
We searched up this like uncanny valley phenomenon that's pretty new on the internet, which is where like human faces can't, or they get uncomfortable because they can't recognize another human face, and so they say it's AI. And there's been a lot of that going around with like Joe Biden videos about pretty controversial topics like what's going on in Gaza and the insurrection. And so there's just like a bunch of sites and stuff saying that, oh, Joe Biden didn't actually say this, it's AI. And so I think it's still important to lean on vetted sources like BBC and NBC and the White House and stuff to confirm or deny these things.
Yeah, that's such a good point. So when we talked about AI earlier, we focused a lot on text-based AI, right? But probably the scarier thing, and this is what Elijah is talking about, is deep fakes. So if you're not familiar with what these are, there's a channel on YouTube called Corridor Crew. And if you search Corridor Crew deepfakes, they have a couple really good videos explaining them. Basically, you feed the AI lots of footage of this person. And when it's someone like the president of the United States, there's lots of footage out there, right? And then you can basically make that person say whatever you want. Some of this is used in Hollywood. So if anyone watches The Mandalorian, when Luke Skywalker showed up, he was deep faked to look like he looked back in the 80s. You know, Mark Hamill does not look like that anymore, right? And there's other places where they've used this. But yeah, it's really scary because as the technology gets better, these get more accurate, right? And so we gotta, like Elijah said, do some checks. Alrighty, so I actually ran us over here. Sorry about that. Let's have one member of each group share their document with me so that I can give y'all credit. So if you just go into your Google Doc, there's a share button, and you can just type in my email address, tmyers@vwu.edu, and then I'll get an email about it. And so I'll use that. Everybody have a good weekend, and I will see you on Monday.
Professor